I would like to share with you first three main elements: the recent developments at the UPOV level, key provisions of the 1991 Act of the UPOV Convention, and also to focus what are the challenges and the opportunities in encouraging investment in plant breeding. In relation to the main topic that we are here today is also going back to the UPOV mission statement to provide and promote an effective system of plant variety protection with the aim of encouraging the development of new varieties of plants for the benefit of society. I have really a pleasure to share with you recent developments in UPOV, in the UPOV family. We had a great honor last week, November 3rd, to have the Minister of Justice from Ghana that came to UPOV to actually deposit the instrument of accession of Ghana to the 1991 Act of the UPOV Convention, Ghana becoming the 78th member of UPOV. So now the UPOV members cover 97 states. That means that there is a really dynamic moment now in UPOV, and as you can see, also very encouraging signs of dynamic requests for examination of laws for future UPOV members in the region, Myanmar, Brunei Darussalam, and also recently we just been reported that Mongolia just adopted the law. And as you know, Mongolia also is in the process of the accession to the UPOV membership. As it was announced during the opening by Mr. Patton, I'm happy also to share the evolution in relation to applications received in UPOV members. And you can see China is on the top number of applications received. That was already the case last year. But really the key development, as you can see, is in relation to the titles issue. This is the first year, for the first time, that China actually is the top #1 member of also titles issue in relation to the 10 UPOV members that are highlighted here. Also, a brief summary of the country of residence of applicants and also the proportion of the 10 countries that are UPOV members, and you can see the evolution and the also important contribution of China in that regard. It was also announced that just very recently the UPOV Council approved a program for the use of the Chinese language for certain uses of Chinese language in UPOV. And I would like just to highlight and to recall the main also development is that there will be a Chinese interpretation for the UPOV sessions in Geneva, starting from next year. Will be translation of selected UPOV materials into Chinese, including distance learning materials. Chinese speaking professional, hopefully in the UPOV office, also to contribute to the work. Very important, as we know, worldwide, the facilitating of applications through UPOV PISMA and the role of China in this regard, and also the role of China in training and a particular training center on plant variety protection. If we move now to the second part of the presentation, to the part on the key provisions on the 1991 Act, and I will also focus on recent developments taking place in UPOV. The key elements I would like to highlight on the key provisions of the UPOV Convention are, on one side, the key changes in relation to gender and species from a country moving from the 78 Act to the 91 Act, also key changes in relation to a scope of the breeder's right, and also in relation to the exceptions to the breeder's rights. And in that regard, I would like to highlight in particular main developments in relation to key topics like essentially derived varieties, harvested material, and farm-safe seed. In relation to gender and species, just to highlight that when a country is bound by the 91 Act and it is a UPOV member, after 5 years of becoming a UPOV member, it needs to offer protection to all gender and species. And in that regard, the list that applies at the time of becoming bound by the 91 Act, when it's a UPOV member that was previously bound by the 78 Act, it would be the list that at that time applies. But then there is 5 years to extend to all plant genera and species. I would like to highlight that the trend and the majority of UPOV members actually is that they apply to all plant genera species. And even this is the case of Ghana that just recently deposited its instrument of accession. There are only very few that apply to a limited list of genera species. As you can see, Brazil, China, Egypt, Trinidad, Tobago, and South Africa. And just to show, some of the experience from Latin America. Latin American countries, the majority of them, when they became UPOV member, they actually provided the system that was available for protection for all plant genus species. As you can see, the situation in Chile, clearly an increase of number of applications at the time that they joined UPOV. The same we can see from Mexico, Ecuador, very impressive. And then also the case of Argentina and Colombia. But then we see that there was one country, Latin America, that opted for the transitional option of a list of plant genus species. That was the case of Brazil. And you can see when they became UPOV member, Brazil became UPOV member, the increase in number of applications was quite small. Then the situation evolved when they extend to additional genus species. But just to say, one of the key benefits is cooperation and examination that enables countries from the start to actually offer protection to all plant genus species. And this has been very efficient in the majority of the UPOV members. If we move now to the scope of the breeders' rights, the acts covered by the protection. And we know that there are certain acts that require the breeder's authorization, as they are included here. Very important also, the exporting and importing also that is part of the scope provided by the breeders' rights under the 91 Act. Then we also know that certain material automatically receives protection, the all propagating material, all the material that serves to propagate the variety, seeds, seedlings, cuttings. And we know that under the 1991 Act, there is extension to harvested material under two conditions. If this material is obtained through the unauthorized use of the propagating material, and the breeder didn't have reasonable opportunity to exercise his right. So only if these two conditions applies, there is extension to harvested material. This is a matter that has got a lot of attention now recently in UPOV. And you may recall there was a seminar that took place this year in May 2027. The materials and the video of this seminar is available in the UPOV website. But I like to highlight that the awareness that was raised in particular in relation to a particular sector like fruit trees led to the importance for the administrative and legal committee to look into the guidance in this area and to establish a working group to work on the revision of 3 explanatory notes, the one dealing with harvested material, also the one dealing with propagating material because of the relationship between these two key elements of the scope of the right, and also the explanatory notes on provisional protection. So this working group will have its first meeting on March 15, 2022. And I'm really happy to highlight that we have China as one of the members of this working group. So we count with the contribution of China in this process, as they did also in the seminar. We had a speaker from China. If we move to another very important element is the extension of the scope of the breeder's right to certain varieties, those who are not clearly distinguishable from the protected variety, those whose production requires the repeated use of the protected variety. In the case of hybrids, if the parent lines are protected, under UPOV system, both parent lines and hybrids can also be filed for protection and protected on their own right. And the varieties which are essentially derived from the protected variety. Looking into varieties who are essentially derived from the protected variety, we have also identified the need to pay particular attention to this very important policy area. And this is what led into a seminar in 2019. We had breeders from different crop areas to talk about the challenges that they were facing in relation to this particular matter and the practices among breeders. And that highlighted that the existing guidance of UPOV did not reflect the breeders' practices in this particular area. So it was also highlighted at the seminar that the evolution of breeding techniques had created new opportunities and incentives for predominantly derived varieties from initial varieties more rapidly and also at a lower cost. This also led to the establishment of a working group at the level of the administrative and legal committee. And this working group met 4 times, during the 2020 and 2021. And that led to a guidance, revised guidance, that was recently approved in October by the Administrative and Legal Committee. This guidance now is under the formal procedure to be formally adopted by the UPOV Council by correspondence. This other area that I would like to share with you in relation to the 1991 Act are the exceptions to the breeders' rights. Under the UPOV conventions, there are 4 exceptions. 3 of them are compulsory, obligatory in all the laws. They need to be provided. And one of them, farm-safe seed, is optional. It's a matter for the legislator to decide to incorporate it into the national or regional law. If we look into private and for no commercial purposes, because the others experimental for breeding other varieties also are well known, also in relation to countries bound by the 78 Act. But let's focus on private and non-commercial purposes. This is really meant to cover those acts from, let's say, subsistence farmers, where actually, what they produce from planting a protected variety is mainly to serve for food security for their own family and dependents. And therefore, that will be considered to be outside the scope of the breeder's right. There is now also a development at the UPOV level where there was identified a need to provide further clarity and to establish a working group to develop guidance on private and non-commercial, and in order to look into the particular situation of smallholder farmers. This is very important because through this exercise, what led to the establishment of this working group, there was a particular, I will say, contribution by UPOV members and observers in relation to their experience and guidance in relation to smallholder farmers. And it was reported that actually no legal action has been filed, by UPOV members against smallholder farmers. So clearly, this is an area that deserves attention, and this is why this working group has been established in order to provide clarity in this very important policy area. If we move now to the commercial farmers, whether a small commercial farmers, middle or large, then we are within the optional exception to the breeder's rights, and I may report that it is really implemented in the majority of UPOV members that are bound by the 1991 Act. And in that regard, the UPOV Convention provides the key elements of this optional exception. And this really says that when the farmer purchased the new seed and planted in their own farm, in their own holdings, then through the product of the harvest, it may reserve part of the harvest for planting in its own farm for the next season. And very important, the UPOV Convention provides that this exception needs to be implemented within reasonable limits and safeguarding of the legitimate interest of the breeder's rights. This is very, very important to provide for these constant incentives for breeders to continue to develop new varieties in order to meet the needs of farmers. It's very important to find a right balance in relation to this exception to ensure that at least those who are middle and large commercial farmers can contribute, even if they do farm-safe seed, to provide some remuneration for breeders to continue breeding new varieties. And this is also a key message. This is really an exception that reflects a historical practice of farmers of saving seed. So normally that will apply to a small grain cereals, but it might not be appropriate in relation to other crop like fruit, ornamentals, and vegetables when there is not a practice of the farmers, to use the fruit or of the flower as such as a basis for propagating material. So really, already in relation to which crops this particular exception applies, it is very important to identify those that really there is a practice of farmers of saving seed for the next season. And again, here is again a matter of balance, because normally the farmers' practices will be that part of the harvest, the grain will be used to feed animals or to further, produce through flour, bread, etc. Or then part of the harvest that is conserved and conditioned in a particular way to be used as seed for the next season. But again, within the limits provided probably in the regulations, to ensure that there is a constant incentive for breeders to continue breed these new varieties are very important for the farmers. If we look now into what are the challenges and the opportunities to create really a vibrant and encouraging environment for plant breeding. And this is really the type of policy considerations for those who are considering, joining the 1991 Act. Here, I would like to share with you a very recent survey undertaken by the World Farmers Organization, giving the voice to the farmers, because those are the ones who really know what is the best for them. And here, there are some of the findings from this particular consultation. Do farmers use new improved varieties? At 71% say yes to the survey. Then again, how they consider importance new plant varieties for the success of their farm. The majority of the farmers that reply consider very important or important. If we look into the key, I would say, bases that will trigger why for the farmers is important improved varieties, we have on the top the better yields to produce less with more, then improve income to really this entrepreneurship element of farming to provide business opportunities, pest and disease resistance, drought tolerance, reduce costs on inputs, higher value of products, access to new markets, export material, and new products. If we look into also the very important matter about responding to climate change, we see how farmers consider that very important or important, the majority of them. If we look into the importance of sustainable food systems and the role of new improved varieties, again, produce more with less, very important and important, so the big majority. So these are the key elements of what the farmers want. And then what the plant variety protection system in an effective manner can provide is a diversity of breeders in order to meet these diversity needs of farmers. So an effective and vibrant system will be the one that will create incentives for farmer breeders, public research institutes that protect their varieties, small, medium-sized companies, large companies. So all of them are very important in order to meet the needs of the farmers and society as a whole. And if we give this example of an imaginary scenario, we have on top this diversity of breeders that will try to meet these needs that are identified by farmers. So high performance variety with the quality characteristics that will meet the needs of consumers, and to breed those varieties in order to deliver quality seed at the right time with the right location, and also to ensure an effective distribution channels where the small, medium-sized enterprises engage into long-term type of relationship to provide access to this market and to international trade. And this is an example. So we have on top this diversity of breeders, small, medium, large, public and private. And then again, we have, a diversity of farmers, some of them in very remote locations with very particular needs. And that again, through a very, professional production and distribution channels that is facilitated through a network of licensed and distributors, that those are interested to play that role in a long-term also type of relationship, because there is a license. The license because they are protected varieties that ensure those who participate in the value chain to also have win-win situations that will ensure that then quality seed is distributed at the right time in the right quantities, but also information and access to these markets on quality standards. And one example of how this works in practice and how that provides these benefits is the case of Vietnam, where they had a situation prior to being bound by the 1991 Act, where there was actually no professional seed quality control, and farmer was very difficult even to incorporate some of these new varieties. But then when they became UPOV member with a good service and better quality, and this ensure distribution channels and licenses through the royalties because they were protected varieties, that ensure a really dynamic sector. Just to conclude, at the heart of what we do is the importance of the policies that encourage plant breeding. And as Mr. Bato mentioned at the beginning, we had a great opportunity to have a seminar just during the UPOV sessions that really highlighted, with experience of UPOV members, how plant variety protection is at the heart of other policies that are very important for society. So I really encourage you to look into the video of the seminar. There were presentations, from China, from the European Union. So you really find a lot of very useful information on this regard. Thank you very much for your attention.